Hey, Lee Park Student Ministry leaders. I'm Alex, your youth pastor. You know me well. This week's passage that we're looking at is James 5:16. It says, "Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed." So the topic that I want to look at and we're going to be talking about in training today is what it looks like to move from a relationship to accountability. Something very important in student ministry that gets missed a lot is accountability. So it's very important for us in this ministry to look at how we do that practically. So we're going to move on to the 4 levels of relationships. And it starts with relationship. That's the initial connection with a student or with a person. And it always moves to trust. Once you start to build that relationship and that connection, it leads to that person trusting you. And that a lot of times leads to vulnerability. We see that a lot in camp settings or in retreat settings where there's a lot of emotions spilled out. And that leads to vulnerability, but a lot of times that vulnerability is empty because it ends up being lost after the week is over and the student goes home, the leaders go home, and it's never talked about again. It's never addressed, and it's never able to progress into the 4th level of relationship where it's accountability. So it's relationship leads to trust, trust leads to vulnerability, and vulnerability should lead to accountability in a perfect scenario. Because without accountability, the vulnerability is lost because it is made meaningless because there's no holding accountable from that vulnerability. So let's say that you have a kid in one ministry night confess to you that they've been struggling with certain sins. If you don't address that student and help them stay accountable throughout the weeks ahead and talk about what it looks like to move away from those sins, then that student will most likely stay in that sin until someone helps them out of it. So this week we want to really dive deep into what it looks like to help students into accountability relationships. And how we're going to do that is we're going to use our small group methods. These are closed small groups that happen throughout the week, and they're led by one of you guys, the leaders. And the reason why they're closed is because once a group becomes vulnerable, in order for them to move into that accountability stage, they need to be the same group over a long period of time. So that means that for example, if you have a group of people that tell each other what they're going through, and then the next week a new person comes in, you're basically starting from ground zero. So that's why we're keeping these small groups closed. Sign-ups are going to start in the fall, and they're going to run all the way to the end of the semester. So we're going to be talking about that today in today's training. So let's dive into it.